This is Dr. Sirisha, working as Associate Professor in Institute of Aeronautical Engineering College. Today we are talking about few company-specific programs under the wing of Career and Employability Skill Division. Right? So in this division and in these sessions, we are going to talk and discuss about few programs or style of programs which we frequently encounter, the students encounter, especially at the time of placements or hackathons or any coding competitions. Today we are going to discuss two most familiar questions. Have a look at this question. This is talking about parenthesis. We need to calculate the longest parenthesis, which must be a valid one and which is having a constraint, and how you call a parenthesis string to be valid. So they have given two conditions for it. One is every opening parenthesis must have a closing parenthesis. And guys, you need to remember that it doesn't mean, this is known as the left or the opening parenthesis, and this will be right or closed parenthesis. And in our basic common sense says that an order of first left parenthesis occurring followed by a closed parenthesis occurrence is known as a valid one, right? You cannot bet that first right will come and then the left. Say this is the closed parenthesis and this is the open. You cannot expect a closed parenthesis ahead of open parenthesis, right? That is what the first point is saying. And the second one is saying that open parenthesis must be closed in the correct order. The order must be the correct one, which I have just mentioned, right? The order must be first a parenthesis must be open and then it must be closed. Let me explain you the same with a set of examples. Have a look at this example, the first one. Here you can see 3 open parentheses are given, followed by 1 closed parenthesis, right? So say this is open 1, open 2, and this is open 3. And the one which is closed one gets paired with the open 3. This is the only set, a pair, right? Which is properly valid, with the valid reasons it is closed. So the output is 2 because they have given that the opening and closing parenthesis will contribute in the length of the parenthesis, valid parenthesis in a string. So the open one will contribute for 1 and the closed one for 2. So the length is 2. Coming to the small explanation of the second one, have a look. It started with closed parenthesis followed by left and right and closed, right? Have a look at this string properly. So the first character itself is an invalid one because it is a right or a closed parenthesis. You cannot expect a parenthesis string starting with a closed one because it needs, it should be opened first before it is closed, right? So follow. You have a left followed by a right. This is a valid one. Say its count, it will increase the count to 2, right? Followed by a left and a right, right? So this will increase the count again by 2, which will make it as 4. It is a valid one. Again, a closing parenthesis. It doesn't have any pair up with a open one. So even this cannot contribute to the count. So the total count will be 2 plus 2, which is 4. The same is the answer over here. So this is the task which we have to do. So taking into consideration parenthesis, as soon as we hear the word parenthesis, the first point which strikes our mind is applications of stacks. Yes, dear. Applications of stack. The best example of applications of stacks is parenthesis balancing, right? The compiler will be designed in such a way that the parentheses are balanced. So taking that into consideration, various kinds of questions are coming to the picture in case of placements. And this question is one of that kind. So let me solve this problem using Python as my programming language. As I have said in my previous video also, in your coding wing of your competitions or hackathons or your placements, you'll get a privilege to choose one of the programming language, dominant one, like say C++, Java and Python. You can choose any one based upon your comfort zone. So my personal comfort zone is Python. So I'm going to execute or solve this problem using Python. So let's shift it to Python. Yes, guys, here we are in Python environment. Let's start working on it. And the version of Python which I have taken is 3.10. And let me start working on it. Let me open an editor for the same. Yes. And the editor goes like this. This is an environment where I'm going to write my Python code, right? So let's start doing this. Before starting, I have a habit of putting a comment line which tells me or any novice who or a new person who opens this program must be able to know what is the gist of this program, right? So the thing is long parenthesis, right? So the longest parenthesis you have to calculate. So that I have mentioned in the comment line. So let's start programming for the sake. Okay. So basically what I need, the driver code. So for the basic input which I'm going to feed to this program is a string. And the string will contain only open and close to parenthesis. The order can be in any way. In the input, the order of open and closed parenthesis can be in any way. Based upon that, I'm going to retrieve the valid pairs and the length of all, right? Let's do that. So for that, I need a string. So the function for that is input, right? So the basic default function in Python is input. So if you are reading a string itself, just leave that. If you want to read an integer, put a prefix of integer. That is not required right now. So I want to write the logic of this code using functions, right? So let me call a function for the same. Okay. So print find len. This is the name that I'm going to give to my function find len. So the basic parameter which I'm supposed to pass to it is the string, right? So, and whatever the function, the find length function is going to return me, that will be printed. So this is my basic driver code. So in the driver code, I have read a string which is only of parenthesis, collection of parentheses, I can say, in any order. And I'm passing that as a parameter to the function find len. So let me define the function now. So def. So prior, you guys, I hope you know that before using any function, we have to define it first. So length of string. This is the parameter that I'm going to pass. Right. So find length. Right. So let's start with calculating the length of the string which I have read, which is the collection of parentheses, right? Then followed by, I'm going to take a temporary list, which is going to act like a stack for me, right? And I'm going to append -1 to it as a reference element, so that to say that the stack is not empty. Even soon after initialization, I'm inserting a value -1. And the basic point of concern is append operation over here. Then you might be getting a doubt. There are two kinds of function to introduce a new element into a list. The one is insert and the other is append function. Two functions are there. So as I have declared a list over here, which is going to act like a stack for me, and I have appended -1. So as with the declaration, you can see that it is an empty list. So whatever the element you are going to place, it will be placed in the index value 0, right? So apart from append, you can use insert function also, but it will raise the complexity of your function, find len. Why? You have to understand, or you have to keep few things in mind while working with the inbuilt functions. Why? Because insert function needs two parameters. The first parameter is the position where you want to insert, and the second parameter is the element which you want to insert. So when you go deep into the working of this insert function, you can see that it searches for that position, the position which you have inserted as a parameter to the insert function. As it goes for searching, the order of it is that, or you can say the time complexity of insert function is big O of n. If say n is the number of elements in your list, right? Even if it is the first element or the last element, whatever the index value or position value may be, the complexity of insert function inherently is big O of n. Coming to the append function, its complexity is big O of 1. Why? Because append function is used to insert the element by default at the end of the list. You need not mention any position or depth. So whatever the list name you are taking and a parameter which you want to insert, by default it will take it to the last position and insert. That means as a tail element it is going to insert. So the order or time complexity of append function is order of 1, right? So as this is a function, I have to use my brackets, right? So with this, that's why as the order of append function is very less, I'm inserting -1 into it, right? Then let's go with the next one. The basic result, which I'm going to initialize it as 0 because I need the count of balanced one, right? So, right. So I need to travel throughout the input string and check what kind of parenthesis it is, whether it is open parenthesis or closed parenthesis, right? So for that, I have taken the for loop. The ith value is going to run from 0 to n minus 1, where n is the length of the input string, right? So if the string, ith element in the string is left parenthesis, if this is the case, if it is left parenthesis, then I'm going to append 1 into, I'm going to append the ith value, whatever the ith is. That is, if it is left parenthesis, I'm going to insert that into the temporary stack which I'm handling. Else, what else you can have, my dears? You can have a closed parenthesis. That is the case. If that is the case, then if length of your string is not equal to 0, then pop, remove it. If the length of string is not 0, then remove it, right? So one more case, when if length of your stack is not equal to 0, either you can calculate the result, that is max of the result, or I minus the length of the length of the stack itself minus 1. Sorry, length of stack minus 1. Retrieve that element out of these two, one of the elements. Else append that element. Append I into your stack, the temporary stack which you have taken. So have a look at this code, guys. So I have taken the length of your stack is not equal to 0, either you can calculate the result, that is max of the result, or I minus the length of the stack itself minus 1. So taken, I'm considering each and every element from the input string, right? So after reading those elements, I'm checking whether it is left parenthesis or right parenthesis. If it is left parenthesis, I'm simply appending it to the stack, temporary stack which I have taken. If other than it is not a left parenthesis, the other case, in this question we have only two sides. Either it can be left or right. Else part deals with the right parenthesis. If it is right parenthesis and the length of the stack, that is the basic stack which you have considered, is not equal to 0, then pop it, right? Or else the other case, if it is equal to 0, check about maximum between the result or within the length, right? Even if that is not the case, append I into your stack. So this is a simple logic to find the length of the largest, right? So longest parenthesis. So what is the result? Result is stored in, I'm going to return result. So finally the result is stored in the result parameter, res parameter. Okay, let me save this one. So find len is the name of the function which I have taken. So I'm naming this program also with the same name. Okay, let's have a look at the code which we have written, guys. Yes. So the basic driver code. Yes. The driver code says read a string, input string, then pass the function to the input string to the function. Coming to the function, I have calculated the length and placed it in the variable n. So I'm taking a temporary stack to run our program and appending a value -1 into it initially, and I have initialized the result variable to 0 so that it gets changed during course of execution. So for each and every character in the given string I have considered, as I said, it can be either left or right. So let's run this one. So what they're asking for? They're asking for a simple input. So have a look at this one. It's a simple run, the first run of my code, which says that 4. As you can see, a left and right parenthesis, closed one properly will give you the length 2, and another pair of the same will give me a length of 2. So a cumulative of that is a 4. So let me rerun the same. Let me give some other input. Say I'll start with right parenthesis now. I can give nested also. Have a look at this one, guys. So first one is a right parenthesis. Remove it. It cannot be considered. Next is followed by a pair of left and right parentheses, which initializes or starts the story of a result with a length 2. Then followed by I have given nested parenthesis, which is valid and balanced one, which is having a length of 4. Right? So previously my result was having 2 and now it is 4. The total is 6. And the string is ending with a left parenthesis. And this left parenthesis is the last character in the given string, and it is not having a counterpart for that. Right? It is not having a counterpart for that. So it cannot be calculated or added into the length of valid parenthesis. So it is removed. The total answer is 6. Right? Let's go back to our program. Try to understand this, guys. Have a look at this program and try to understand. So as I said, whenever we talk about a parenthesis, dealing with any program related to parenthesis, the first point that must strike your mind is that talking about one of the implementation of stacks. So the things that comes to your mind will be the pop, push, the append functions and all, right? So have a look at this one, guys. Okay, with this note, I'll conclude this program and let's go with the next problem of today's session. Yes, guys. So this is the next program or second program of today's session, which is pair difference. A very simple question. The input which the story which they have narrated over here says that you are given an array of elements. Okay, where L represents the length of the array and N represents an element, a number, right? So what is the use of that number? We'll see it soon. So you have to find the number of pairs of elements in the array whose absolute difference is n. So let me explain you this with small example. Have a look at this one. Okay, so the length of the list they have given is 6 and the n value is 5. So as they have said it is 6, we have taken 6 elements, 15, 10, 5, 20, 30 and 25. Okay, fine. Then the difference they are asking is 5. That is the n value is 5. So what can be the possible output of the same? So 15 minus 10. Right? So 15 minus 10 will lead to 5. That is one answer. As they're talking about absolute difference, even 10 minus 15 will also give you a result. Both are valid ones. Okay, both are going to contribute to the count and the count will be 2. Okay, this is just a pair I'm talking about. Go with the other elements. Okay, you can have 10 minus 5, 5 minus 10, even the result of that is 5. Okay, here I'm talking about absolute difference, guys, not an ordinary subtraction between two elements. Absolute difference. Even this is 5, which will increment the count to 4. So previous count is 2 and the count of this one is again to total 4. Okay, then fine. What are the remaining elements you can have? Have a look at this one, guys. So 15 and 20, that can be one of the pairs, right? 20 minus 15, even this, the count is 2, right? Then what can you have? Yes, 20 and 25. One more result you can have. 20 and 25. 25 and 20. Even that is going to give you a result, right? So what next you can have? That our program is going to work, right? So let me go with another example. Have a look at this one. Here they have mentioned that the number of elements are 5 and the n value, the difference value they are asking about is 45. So the elements are 90, 70, 20, 80 and 50. So you subtract or you calculate the absolute difference between any two elements, you will not find the n value, right? So you have a look at this example, guys. So 90 minus 70, 90 minus 20 or 80. Obviously, we're looking at the figure 5 as in the ones position. And for all the elements in the list, it is 0. That itself tells us that you will not get a solution. The cases where the count is 0, simply print -1 as the result. That is, -1 itself represents that for the given problem, you don't have a solution, right? Good. This is the question which is given to you. What is the approach you are going to adopt? Initially, whenever I address my students, the first point I tell them is identify what input they are asking you for and which order they are asking you for, right? So have a look at the examples which they have given. First of all, they have read the values of L and N first, then L number of values they have read, right? Followed by what output they are expecting. They are expecting an integer value, right? The total count of or total number of pairs with an absolute difference of n. If you do not have any result, then just print -1. Okay, so identify first of all what inputs you have to read and in which order you have to read, and then what output they are expecting. Is it one line, two lines, it is alphabetical, what, right? Please keep these two things in your mind. Then think of the logic what they are asking you for. That means you have to calculate the difference between each and every pair of elements in the given list. Okay, I'll address the solution of this problem in Python. Let's move to Python. Yes, guys. Let's resume to the Python environment. I'm going to use Python 3.0 for the solution of the given problem. Okay, let's start. Hashtag. And what the program is for? This program is to find the difference, right? Absolute difference between the elements, and you need the count of it, right? So let me name the program as or the basic definition of the program as count of absolute difference, count of absolute difference equal to say n. Okay, a shortcut form. The one who opens this one will absolutely understand. Count of absolute difference, which is equal to n, right? So let's start writing a code for this one. So the previous example, I have used functions and I have shown you, right? In this one, I'm not going to use any functions, a simple brute force method to address the solution. Let's start doing this one. So what is the first point they have mentioned? They have mentioned that you have to read the values of L and N, right? So let me do the same, the L and N. Using map function, I'm going to read the values of and yes. So L number of values will be there in the list. Now I have to read the list, right? So let me name it as ARR. So this will be my list. So I'm going to use the collection type list, map of yes. There is a constraint over here. When I'm using this function, it will keep on reading all the values unless you press enter, right? But here there is a constraint saying that you have to read only L values. So I'm using a slicing operator for the same. So L over here acts as the stopping point. So the list, the index values of the elements in the list will be starting from 0 and end with L minus 1. Okay, so this is how I'm going to read my list. So basic reading of input is done. Now I have to go for counting. So let me take my result get initialized to 0, right? This is the temporary variable, right? So I have to run throughout the length of the list, right? So I'm considering each and every element in the list ARR, right? So to calculate the absolute difference, range of L, right? So every ith value is going to check its absolute difference with all the elements in the list, right? So if n is equal to absolute is the inbuilt function which is used to calculate the absolute difference between the two parameters that we are going to pass to it. So the parameters which I'm going to pass to it are I and J, right? So these are the two parameters that I'm going to pass. It will take the absolute value. Yes. So now I have calculated the difference. If it is equal to n, if this condition gets true, then I'm going to increment my result, or else it will not do anything. Just go for the next value, right? So there ends the basic logic, and then how I'm going to print it, right? That is the point. So I'm going to print simply -1. I'm going to print -1 if my result is equal to 0. If the result is equal to 0, that means you cannot find any pair of elements in your list whose difference or absolute difference is equal to n. Then I'm going to print -1. Else what I'm going to do? I have to print whatever the content that is present in result. That will be the final result, right? So print of result, right? So let me store this one with the name count. Yes, count. That simple. No, let me not give you an inbuilt function. Okay, count difference. Count difference is the name which I've named the function with. Then let's start with the execution. Have a look at this one, guys. Have we done it properly? I think we have done it in the driver code. Yeah, the whatever the code we have given is the driver code. We have not used any functions, right? So have a habit of using these small comment lines, guys, so that the person who opens this program will be able to understand what is written. Okay, so I'm reading two parameters and then I'm reading a list of size L. I've initialized the final result variable to 0 and I've taken a nested loop to calculate the absolute differences, right? Let me start this one. Yes, I have saved this. So L and N are the parameters, right? Let me take L as 6 and N, the absolute difference, as 5. So the elements which 6 elements I have to read. The next line I have to read the elements, right? So let me start with some random variables. 5, 20, 15, 25. So I've taken 5 elements, say 13. So the total number of pairs that you are going to get is 10. Whereas you can manually also do it and you can get the answer. So let me run always whenever the question is having probability of getting two sides of answers, two kinds of. So if the condition satisfies, I'll get this result, else I have to get that result. So in that case, always check both the cases of your program and then come to a conclusion that your code is an executable code, right? So let me go for some, a case where, yes, the same, a case where the result must be -1. So let me take whole values 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 and 60. So you can see that the difference between any two elements will be a value whose LSB will be, or you get the one's digit number will be 0. It will never be 5. So the result of this one must be -1. And you got it. Right? So this is a simple program. Let me take you to the program. Have a look at this program. This is a simple program which tells you there's many loads of questions you will be getting, or variations of the questions that you will be getting on using these lists, right? So here they have asked difference, right? Absolute difference. What if they ask you not absolute difference, but the difference must be equal to n? That is, it should be just 5, the example which you have taken, right? Let me do that. Then just remove this apps. So if your requirement n is 5, so the difference between the two elements, if it is 5 only, not even -5, it will give you the result. Let me run this one. Okay, let me take a copy of the same input, possible input which we have used just now. Let me copy it and I'm going to paste it over here, and the result, half of that. Obviously, guys. So in the previous one, when I have taken absolute difference, I have considered 10 -5 and 5 -10 into my result. But here I can consider only 10 -5, but not 5 -10, because 5 -10 will be -5, which is not my n value, right? So my total result got shrunk to half of the count. right? You may get the questions. You may get the questions in that fashion also, right? So this is one of the variations. And here I have used one big point in here is I've used nested loops. Then what can be the complexity of your program? The complexity of your program depends upon the length of the list you are going to run. So the length of the list is L, right? So the variable I is going to run L number of times. And for every ith value, J variable is going to run L number of times. So it will be L into L. That is big O of L square, the complexity of the program. So if you want, you can try to reduce this one, guys. Attempt it. You will get programming only when you start doing programming. Looking at the programs or the questions will not work out. It's just like maths. The more you work on it, the more your hands are going to run faster, right? So, and with this note, I'd like to say thank you for today's session. Keep following my videos and I'll be posting more and more problems. So right now, as these are the early sessions of my content development towards company specific programming, right? So I'm dealing with simple questions. Soon we'll be starting with nonlinear data structures, say trees or graphs, which are very, very important in competitive programming tests or hackathons or placements. Do watching the videos. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.